Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling AI and open data in urban planning and how it's being used in Sweden specifically. We've got some really cool sources for this one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, one that really stood out is this presentation from Sveriges Ingenjörer district, Stockholm.
Okay.
It's a union, right, and a professional group, mainly engineers, all over Sweden.
I see.
But the thing is, this presentation isn't just about engineering. It shows how they're using data to look at some pretty complex social issues.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Like making sure everyone has access to good schools, for example.
Right.
Or finding ways to ensure enough affordable housing is available.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to society with this data, highlighting the areas that need the most attention, the places where city planners need to focus their energy.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. Using data to kind of expose those inequalities and hopefully do something about them.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of doing something, they actually have this seminar. It's today, September 19th, 2024, as we're recording this.
Oh, wow.
All about AI and open data analysis. So if you're listening right now, you might still have time to catch it.
Very cool.
But if you miss it, no worries. They've got this LinkedIn group you can join. That way you can keep up with everything they're doing and even join the conversation. We'll make sure to share a link in the show notes.
Perfect.
Okay, let's get into this presentation. One of the things that really jumped out right off the bat is how much they emphasize data visualization.
And for good reason, right?
Yeah, totally. But what do you think makes data visualization so important in this context, in understanding urban planning?
Well, it's like translating, isn't it? You're taking raw data, which to most people just looks like a jumbled mess of numbers and figures, and you're turning it into something that everyone can understand. Maps, charts, graphs.
Right.
And suddenly, instead of staring at a spreadsheet trying to make sense of it all, you're seeing patterns emerge, you're seeing trends, you're seeing the story within the data.
And they offer some really cool examples in this presentation. Like they use heat maps to show population density.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they're pulling this data from existing government records. So they're showing how easy it is to take information that's already out there, that's readily available, and use it to understand how a city breathes, where people are concentrated, what areas might be stretched thin.
I see. So like you could see where the potential pressure points are in a city just by looking at the population density.
Exactly. And they get into the distribution of schools across Scandinavia too.
Oh, okay.
But they don't just show you where the schools are.
What do they do?
They actually break it down. They show the number of students in each school. They even go a step further and differentiate between different types of schools, elementary schools, high schools, and so on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And by doing that, they can highlight any potential inequality in how educational resources are distributed, which is huge for urban planners. They need to make sure that all students have equal access to a good education, right?
Absolutely. That level of detail can make a real difference.
Totally. And then they switch gears a bit and look at housing availability. They use these really cool maps with bars of varying heights to represent the number of available units in different areas. So you can instantly see if there's a shortage or a surplus in a particular neighborhood.
It's like taking a snapshot of the housing market at a specific moment in time.
Exactly.
And using that information to make more informed decisions about affordable housing initiatives.
For sure. Now, the cool thing is they don't just stick to the basics. This presentation actually goes into some really advanced data analysis techniques. They even talk about something called the segregation barometer.
The segregation barometer. That sounds interesting.
It is. Have you ever heard of it?
I can't say that I have.
So it's basically this tool that allows you to create a map of Scandinavia.
Yeah.
But instead of just showing the typical borders and cities, it actually visualizes where social and economic disparities are most prominent.
Oh, wow.
So you can see, like, are certain neighborhoods being left behind?
Yeah.
Where are the most striking examples of inequality?
That's powerful stuff.
It is. And it's essential for urban planners who are trying to create cities that are more just and equitable for everyone.
Absolutely, because if you don't know where the problems are, how can you even begin to fix them?
Exactly. And speaking of powerful tools, they also talk about 3D modeling.
3D modeling. How are they using that in urban planning? I'm intrigued.
Well, it's a way to add a whole new dimension to traditional 2D maps, right?
Okay.
Imagine like a cityscape, but instead of just being flat lines on a page, it's built up with glass or something so you can see how all the different elements interact.
Oh, that's cool.
You can see the flow of traffic. You can see the density of the buildings. They even talk about how you can take it a step further and incorporate real-world elements by overlaying these 3D models onto actual cityscapes.
So you're bridging that gap between the data and the physical environment in a really visually compelling way.
Exactly.
That's clever.
And to do all of this, they're using programming languages like R and Python, which are like the building blocks of what they call geocomputation.
And geocomputation is basically...
Is essentially using computers to analyze and interpret geographic data.
Okay.
So it sounds complicated, but it's basically giving urban planners a set of high-tech tools, right, that allow them to really map, analyze, and ultimately reshape their cities in ways that are more efficient and sustainable.
It's taking all that data and turning it into action, into real-world solutions.
Okay, so we've got to talk about AI, right?
Yeah.
Because it's everywhere these days. This presentation, they really dive headfirst into the role of AI in urban planning. And they specifically talk about prompt engineering, data engineering, and data source engineering.
Okay, so break those down for me. What exactly are those things, and why should we care?
So prompt engineering is basically like talking to AI in a language that it understands.
Okay.
You're crafting really specific instructions or prompts that help you get the insights you need from AI models. Think of it like training a dog.
Got it.
You need to be clear, concise, use the right words to get the dog, or in this case, the AI, to do what you want.
So it's all about asking the right questions in the right way.
Exactly. Then you've got data engineering, and that's all about making sure that the data itself is prepped and ready for AI to analyze. Like, imagine trying to bake a cake, right? But the flour's scattered everywhere, the sugar's in one corner, the eggs are who knows where.
Right, a complete mess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So data engineering is basically taking all those ingredients and putting them into neat, organized containers so the AI can come in and work its magic.
I like that analogy.
And then you've got data source engineering, and that's about making sure that you're starting with high-quality ingredients in the first place.
Because if you use spoiled ingredients, your cake is going to taste awful no matter what you do.
Exactly. So data source engineering is about making sure the data is accurate, reliable, because you're using it to train these AI models. And if you feed them bad data, you're going to get unreliable results, right?
It all starts with good data.
Exactly. And speaking of AI, we had to talk about ChatGPT. Everyone's talking about it these days, and this presentation actually uses it as a prime example of AI's potential in urban planning.
Which is really interesting because when most people think of ChatGPT, they think of it as this like novelty tool, you know?
Yeah.
Like they use it to write poems or have funny conversations with a bot. But this presentation shows that it actually has some really practical applications.
Absolutely. It's not just a simple program, though, right? It's really a complex system.
What do you mean?
Well, it integrates large language models and retrieval systems. It's pretty sophisticated.
So it's more like a Swiss Army knife than, say, a simple kitchen knife.
Exactly. Incredibly versatile, but you need to know which tool to use for which job, right?
Right. You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Exactly. And there are times when you need the full-fledged version of ChatGPT, and there are times when a more streamlined version is going to be perfectly adequate.
So it's about understanding the nuances of the different AI tools that are available.
And it's about remembering that AI, unlike a calculator, doesn't always give you a single definitive answer.
Oh, that's an important distinction.
Because it operates in a world of probabilities. It's exploring multiple possibilities and assigning a likelihood to each one.
So it's not just about being right or wrong. It's about understanding the likelihood of different outcomes.
Exactly. And this actually leads to some pretty interesting, if not humorous, situations.
How so?
Well, in the presentation, they shared this anecdote about how ChatGPT struggled to answer a simple question about how many R's are in the word strawberry.
Oh, no. Really?
But then, what makes it even funnier is that it can turn right around and tell you which number is larger, 9.9 or 9.11.
Wow. So it can handle these complex mathematical concepts but trips up on basic spelling.
It just highlights that AI, while incredibly advanced, is still under development, right?
There are still some kinks to work out.
For sure. So how do we actually harness the power of AI effectively in urban planning? Well, they talk about the importance of prompts.
Prompts.
Yeah, which are basically the